Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Ellingson, and I'll be your host tonight. I'm a proud member of Lipedema Canada, and we're so excited to have Diana Dimmock with us to talk about building a strong lipedema community. She's going to introduce herself and get us started. Thank you so much for coming, Diana.
Thank you, Crystal, for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me to talk about building community today. So, first, I do want to start off with a land acknowledgement. I want to respectfully acknowledge that I'm presenting on Treaty 6 territory, which has been the home of Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. For tens of thousands of years, Indigenous people have lived and thrived in this place that we call Sherwood Park. Those people include the Blackfoot, Gros Ventres, Cree, Saulteaux, or Anishinaabe, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and later the Métis. This land is colonially known as Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada. I commit to prioritizing and holding space for those Indigenous voices. So, here's the big question. Who am I? Why am I here? And what do I do? So, I am the founder of Accessibility for Everybody Consulting, and I'm also a dedicated advocate for inclusivity, accessibility, and self-advocacy. I actually started with learning about my lipedema journey and lymphedema journey last year at the age of 34. And when I got diagnosed, and I decided to channel some of that personal experience into advocacy and helping others navigate the challenges of lipedema while also fostering community and support. I met the beautiful people here at Lipedema Canada very shortly after I was diagnosed, and I was very fortunate to have this information. So, some of the services that Accessibility for Everybody Consulting provides are self-advocation techniques, educational awareness, business consultation, and public speaking. I do want to go over some of my identities and background. So, my own lived experience includes that I have a university education. I have a Bachelor of Arts in anthropology. I am neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I have lipo-lymphedema, which is a combination of lymphedema and lipedema. And I am white, and I'm also disabled. So, if you've gotten here already and you don't know what lipedema is, here's a quick little description that I pulled from the Lipedema Canada page. So, lipedema is a chronic medical condition that forms a symmetrical buildup of adipose tissue or fat in the legs, arms, and lower trunk. It often causes pain, swelling, heaviness, loose skin, easy bruising, and the feeling of nodules under the skin. These nodules often feel like rice pearls or walnuts under the skin. So, let's get into it. What are we going to go over today? What is community? I always like to start with a definition so we can all be on the same page and have the same information. Why is it important? What are some examples? Why we need it? And how do we build it? So, what is community? It is that feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. I mean, I think most people have experienced community, hopefully. I know for myself, there are so many different levels of community that you can be a part of, but let's go into it a little bit more. So, here's the big question. Why is this important? Why do we all need to know about community? Why do we all need to be part of one? So, community is really important because experiencing a sense of belonging is vital for our psychological well-being. Being part of a healthy community can help us feel connected to others, as well as feel we're a part of something larger than ourselves. I think a really good example of this was when we went through COVID and how we realized that being isolated all the time and having all this time to ourselves really wasn't the healthiest. This is especially important for people who've experienced trauma or loss, who are feeling isolated, marginalized, bullied, or alone, and for those And for all of us, a community can provide that necessary sense of belonging. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about Lipedema Canada is they're really trying to create that sense of belonging by building this community.
So I have a question there.
Yeah,
I just wanted to engage a little bit around community and your lipedema, like when you found out only recently that you had lipedema.
yeah.
Did you find that right away you were trying to find other people that looked like you or that needed the knowledge you have? Or I had this innate feeling that I needed to share what I just learned with my family, with friends. Did you find that right away you wanted to start to share your experience in order to get to
Mm.
know where other people are and how they feel, or maybe that they have a shared experience with you?
I think one of the things that I really felt when I first found out that I had lipedema is what I can only describe as relief and then grief.
Mm,
In that moment of, oh my gosh, I finally know what's happening with my body. Oh my gosh, it's not my fault. Oh, wow, okay. Now, why did I only get diagnosed at 34? I've had this condition likely since puberty.
hmm
And yeah, that really made me want to reach out to other people, but I honestly didn't know where to reach. And luckily for me, I found a convention that was online that I went to, and that's how I met some of the people at Lipedema Canada. And then I was fortunate enough to have a manual lymphatic drainage massage therapist who also knew about some resources. But that's one of the things I think is so important when you start to navigate this um, condition is no one knows where to start. And at least Lipedema Canada brings that that place to start because there's so much information on the website and there's so much information when you start to talk on the Facebook pages and the social media pages. And you can all of a sudden be like, oh, there's somebody who looks like me out there. I thought I was the only one. And I don't know about you, Crystal, but I think just knowing that there are other people out there helps really make you feel not alone. And that's the
Oh,
beautiful
great.
part of community.
Absolutely. So why is
Mhm.
community more important for people with lipedema?
Well, because we've been told our whole lives that it's been our fault. We didn't lose weight, we didn't exercise enough, we didn't eat whatever we were supposed to eat, and the majority of people with lipedema that I know have been struggling their entire lives with this. And we're often gaslit by those medical providers. And sometimes it's simply because they don't have the information or the education, and sometimes it's because they just don't want to deal with us.
And like you
Um,
said, they're on the like on the lipedema patients. Sorry, I'm thinking about your next slide has all of these things into it. Yeah, can we switch over?
oh, the next slide, you bet.
Yes. We're talking, oh, sorry, we're talking about the fat bias that doctors and things have that it's hard for us to get diagnosed because of lack of education, things like that. Um, my apologies. I was looking
Oh,
to
that's
the
okay.
last one.
I'll
That's
go
there.
back here.
Isolation, loneliness. Yeah, all those things
Yes.
you're describing. Lack of resources,
Mhm.
physical barriers, being misguided by family members. And I think we should talk about family for a second.
Absolutely.
Because family are kind of like our initial community, right? They introduce us to people. It's our family is where we feel safe, who supports us in those hard times. You're talking about grief earlier. You need a community when it comes to grief. Um, but being misunderstood by family members is really hard, especially if it doesn't run in your family. Because sometimes it doesn't, but even when it does, oh dear, you have your grandmother's legs, or oh dear, I don't want you to go through what I went through. Maybe you shouldn't eat that. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you shouldn't have that. Um, I think that can be really isolating uh, for members of our community.
Absolutely. And I think because lipedema is not well known in Canada, we're seeing the first generation of people actually getting diagnosed. And that's why we don't have support like we necessarily would want from our family members, or they don't understand. Because, like you said, you just look like everybody else in your family, but no one else in their family has a diagnosis. And one of the things that I find is that Sometimes there's resistance in getting diagnosed because it's scary to know what's going on. It's there's a lot of resistance with family members because they don't want to admit that they also have this thing. And so it's really important to find other people that are at the same place as you and are ready to like look into things because we need people that are going to support us through this, and sometimes family members aren't there yet.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair.
Mhm.
Thank you, Diana.
The other thing that I like to bring up too is we have a lack of resources in Canada because we don't have official health coding for these things. We don't have doctors that are informed. So there's a lot of resources that we don't have here in Canada specifically. And so we can turn to other community members in Lipedema Canada to be like, hey, did you get funding for your compression? Where'd you go? Right? So lots of those different things are why it's more important for us with lipedema to have community and to build that. All right, let's move on to this next slide here. So I want you guys to think about what community means to you and just take a moment about what that feels like, what it means to you. For me, it's the example that I use all the time is community is my dance group. I dance every Tuesday. I get to be around other women that are also plus size. And it's just this supportive, beautiful place that I can just go and be myself. And I don't have to explain my body. I don't have to worry about the stairs. I don't have to worry about anything but being engaged in something that brings me joy. And I think that's really, really important.
That's beautiful.
Crystal, have you got an example that you can share as well?
Well, I've been moving around lately, and I've currently made a move to the US. And uh, I'm just going to bring like this ha can happen to anybody. You don't know your neighbors yet. You don't have people you can rely on to pick up your kids if you're running late, or if you're sick and somebody needs to pick up something at the store. So meeting people outside my house and at the bus stop, so I can develop those relationships. So when my neighbor was sick last week and her husband was away, I could take her kids to the bus stop, so she didn't have to worry about that. And when I didn't have salsa yesterday for my meal, and I said, "Do you have some in the fridge?" She actually made salsa and brought it over to me. Now, how
Oh,
sweet
that's
is that?
amazing. I love that.
But it's having other people in your world that you can call on and rely on. And sometimes when you have it to give, I couldn't make salsa last night. I had too many other things on my plate. She went and did that for me. And when she had trouble taking her kids to school because of her circumstances, I had it in me to give because I was taking my son to school, and even if I wasn't, if I could, I could still bring her kids to school. So those are things that community doesn't mean you have to be there on tuned in 100% of the time. It means when you have a little bit to give, somebody is there to fill up that space that you need. And when you have a lot to give and somebody else needs it, you can give it. So, and that happens in so many aspects of our lives. And that really brings me a lot of joy, and especially when it came to starting Lipedema Canada. I wanted to share and be part of a community that could give me the things that I needed in Canada when I was starting my journey. And I think that's where all the board members were when it was time to say that enough is enough. We need to not be isolated in our own little towns where it's really hard to get people together who have the skills to put something like this together, that we called out throughout the nation, and people rose up to do this work. And we have become a very tight-knit, strong community, and we're only growing. Every day there's more people joining. We're able to help people in a way we couldn't before, and that brings me a lot of joy.
No, absolutely. And I think you brought up a really important point is what happens if you move? What happens if you don't have family in the area? What happens, if for some reason, you've experienced loss and you don't have anyone around? Community that is not just family is really, really important to help with that support system that we all need.
Mhm.
And like you were saying, that reciprocity and that reciprocal relationship between you and a new neighbor, that's fantastic. That's such a quick, easy example of community, because that's all it takes is sometimes is just that quick little offer.
Yeah.
And yeah, going
But
back
you
and
have
forth
to
like
be
that.
willing to get out there and do it is another thing, like even with, well, we say we were part of different groups, on the internet for support, maybe before people found Lipedema Canada. And sometimes we just stay, reading comments or reading and not really participating because we're not ready to share in that way, or we're trying to learn more before we feel confident enough to share our experiences, to ask questions. Um, we want people to feel comfortable, connected. And when you're part of a community like this with our shared experiences, um, it's a peer group in a way that's not just, the age or the people that you're with, but a peer and shared experiences, which that's the experiences we have as lipedema patients. And no matter what stage you're in, um, it's different than what other people experience. Now, everybody has their own experiences, don't get me wrong. Uh, but those shared experiences mean a lot. Like when you can't share your clothes with, your friends when you're a teenager. But, I go to a friend who has lipedema and we're trading we're trading clothes at 40. That's
Yep.
something that you just can't, like, people don't have that experience, like, and waiting
Yes.
that long to have that
Hmm.
experience. That's something lots of kids have, borrowing their friends' clothes. It's not something that exists in some of our worlds. But again, those are things that bring us close together because we often share those experiences.
Absolutely, and that makes me think of just this past November, I helped volunteer to organize a plus size used clothing sale,
Yeah.
because one of the things that I experience as a barrier is finding clothing that fits my body. As on the larger end of, being plus size, I find it extremely hard to find clothing, and I know that so many other people do as well. And then on top of it, with the increasing rising cost of things, I wanted to make sure that we could build that community and build that place for everyone to come and shop if they needed clothing, because clothing is something we all need, right? And it was started out as an idea. That's how simple it was. It started out as an idea, and I just posted on one of the pages and asked for help. And there's three other beautiful people came and helped me, and we made it happen. That idea that I had in August became a reality in November of last year. And it's really that simple. It's not a complicated thing, but you're right, it has to be intentional. We have to make that effort. And we have to maybe get outside of a comfort zone of where after COVID we got really used to sitting back and not participating as much. And I think
And
it's really important to do that participation piece.
yes, and as uh, women, or persons born in that identity at birth,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that we are more apprehensive to do. There's a lot of fear and shame involved in participating in things. Um, but getting outside of your comfort zone, even in small, tiny ways, even just, giving a thumbs up maybe in a comment that you just wouldn't normally, because it's just making those small steps get you to a bigger place.
Absolutely. I'm going to swap the page here because there are some of my examples here we've kind of
Yes.
already touched on. But it's as simple as maybe you go to Aquafit once a week with somebody else and do some swimming, because swimming is great for lipedema. And maybe you just go once a week and there's other people that go once a week as well. And you just say hello one day, right? Or you take a friend with you. Like I mentioned earlier, my dance class is a great example of community. Um, we have performances and we have weekly classes and things like that. We have drop-ins where we get to meet new people. Those are great opportunities. As a kid, I did Girl Guides. I think that's a very classic Canadian example of community, right? Social outings. Why not just meet someone for a cup of coffee, right? It's really not something that takes a lot of effort, and you can change the amount of effort that you need based on how much energy you have that day. It doesn't have to be, oh, I have to go out to this big event and network, right? Like that doesn't have to be it. It can be just as simple as asking someone to go for coffee, offering a smile and a compliment, whatever it needs to be for your comfort level and your energy level. Um, these other things that I've put down, like bowling leagues, or sorry, bowling teams and sports leagues, building a community garden, and like you mentioned, virtual support groups. I tell you from experience, I didn't know that I needed a support group until I was in one.
Oh, I
And
believe that.
especially for lipedema, right? Just for someone else to be like, "Oh, you experienced this? I also experienced this." There's something so validating about knowing that you are not the only person going through these struggles or noticing these things about your body. And you're like, "Oh, is that a lipedema thing? Cool. Okay, thanks for letting me know."
And let's talk a minute about virtual support groups because that is something that we're starting as a group, as Lipedema Canada is starting virtual support groups. Our first one starting on April 4th. We're looking at doing different time zones and getting volunteers to help us with that. We are a very small group right now, but we've got a growing list of volunteers, which we're really excited about getting people assigned to different tasks that don't necessarily have to take up a lot of your time. We're looking at volunteer groups for once a month. And some of the things that we're looking that is going to come from those support groups are some of the things that you mentioned before, like, finding out that there's three more people maybe living really close to you. Maybe one of them doesn't have a vehicle, but they really want to attend, an aqua fitness class, but they haven't been able to. Or maybe, they can't get out for coffee, but there's a couple of people who live close by that could come in for coffee, and have
Yes.
a chat and have some time together in a shared space. I mean, virtual support groups are great, but making those connections, sometimes we don't realize how many people are close to us that we would have never been able to meet. For example, in Nova Scotia, this was probably 4 years ago now. I was in the news because I'm trying to make waves and trying to spread the word. I'm trying to tell people about lipedema and
Mhm.
started my legal battle with the province. And people picked up on that are in my province who had lipedema and reached out to me. And then we have our own, lipedema chat group. And not all of us participated in it all the time. It depended on how much energy we had. But we were there for like the struggles, we were there for the wins. We would share just funny memes. And we got together to have supper together, even though some people lived an hour away. And we made those plans, and Emma flew in from Calgary to hang out with us an evening. Like that's the type of stuff that can happen. And from that grows super strong bonds. And a shared experience like none other. And that's why I think it's important for us to do this right in Canada because things are happening in other parts of the world. And there are small support groups in Canada. But if we can bring people together in their areas, in their homes, it could lead to so many other wonderful things.
Yeah,
Shared experiences are huge.
absolutely. And it makes me think of, when I first got diagnosed, I didn't know a single other person with lipedema. I didn't know one. And it wasn't until I started reaching out on the Lipedema Canada Facebook page and on the Instagram and all the other things that you guys have that I found other people in my area. And it like that's that beautiful moment of connection that I love that Lipedema Canada provides is there's one place for all of us to be like, "Oh, hey, where are you from? Oh, hey, I'm not far from there." And I actually met someone that I now call a friend simply through talking to someone else with lipedema. They're like, "Oh, hey, have you met this person yet?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, you should. They're great." And, I was really fortunate. They actually ended up taking me to a medical appointment recently. And that was so helpful because I don't know about the rest of you, but medical appointments bring me a lot of anxiety sometimes because we can be gaslit, because we can have those conversations with doctors that
And
still
so
don't
much
know about
trauma
lipedema.
related to what we've
Yes,
experienced in doctors' offices. Yeah, my
absolutely.
blood pressure is a problem. I have the
Yeah,
white coats, like, yeah, from all those experience. So yeah, completely understand where you're coming from.
absolutely. And so like just that we've only met twice. And you know what? She came with me to a doctor's appointment. That was amazing. And that's one of the things that I see in this community is that we're really willing to step up for each other because we know how many barriers we face. We know the mental and emotional toll that this takes. And this condition is not an easy one. And I think that's why it's really important to talk about what it feels like to be part of a community because it's support. First and foremost, it's support. It's support that maybe you don't have from the other friends because tell you what, I have a lot of skinny friends. I have a lot of friends who don't have lipedema and don't understand what it's like to be in the same size of body as me. And that's okay. I love
Yeah,
them just the same, but I also need people who get it, who I don't have to explain.
yeah,
And that piece of feeling included in something bigger than just yourself is really, really important.
hmm,
And I think for me, it helps me feel like I have that sense of belonging, you know?
yes, I do.
Um, and like we already mentioned earlier, that safety of someone just accepting you and your body the way that it is really, really, really helpful because they also have a body that looks like that. And being heard is a really, really crucial thing as well. Giving that space to each other to be able to talk about what we're going through and actively listen to each other because we know it's hard. These are all really important things, and that's what it feels like when you have a community of people. And yeah, like we learned at COVID, we need people, we want to talk to each other, we want to be around each other. And that's the beauty of community is it gives that opportunity for that. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I think I'm really passionate about it because of this, right?
Hmm.
There is something really beautiful about being able to lift each other up when we are struggling and be able to validate those feelings and just sit with each other and be like, yep, you know what you're feeling right now is valid and
And I
not
think
trying to
also,
fix it and just letting it be. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
uh, no, you're talking about those feelings, and you should feel them.
Yes,
You shouldn't
absolutely.
stow them down like and they can be terrible, hard, rough, just, the things that some of us experience, not all the time, but, or at the doctor's office, or, you finally get the courage up to do something and things don't turn out. It's okay to to be down and cry and be upset, but it's being able
Hmm.
to share that with somebody and be able to get through those experiences because those feelings need to stop at some point and change because then we become, excuse me, depressed. And, that brings a whole nother side of feeling terrible mentally, feeling terrible physically, and
Yes,
being able to help people get on the other side of those emotions or those bad times um,
absolutely.
is big. Not
It
giving up.
is.
It's easy to give up, and it's
Hmm.
hard to keep going.
It is.
Um, I mean, I think we've all probably been there, where you can't the light you can't see it at the end of that tunnel. But sometimes you need people to show you that it's there, and you can't go it alone all the time. And
Exactly.
that's why I think, and especially virtually, like that we're trying to start out virtually so we can connect with people in a way that they may not be able to. Some people can't leave their homes. Some
Absolutely.
people have severe mobility issues,
Hmm.
and we want to reach them too.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's important that everyone feels included. And that's the beautiful thing about having the options to do in person or virtual is it really helps with the accessibility of events, is it allows people to show up as they need to with the amount of energy that they have. Maybe one day you only have energy to be on a call and you sit on your couch and have a coffee while you listen. And the next day you're out at the Lipedema Canada community event that you guys hosted back in October in Calgary that I was fortunate enough to be able to go to. That was amazing, right? But yeah, the idea is to have the options for both so
Mhm.
that we can show up as we need to. Yeah. So let's go a little bit into how do we create this community? We've already kind of talked about it a little bit. Asking someone to go out for a coffee, hosting that video chat, hosting an in-person meetup. I know that Lipedema Canada specifically is looking for people to start hosting these things as well. I know that you guys are hosting one that we're going to talk about really quickly here as well. Volunteering is a great one. Um, and we were also talking about potentially the idea of a lipedema book club. I love that idea that we were talking about earlier, Crystal, is the idea of like reading different books and maybe just having that as a reason to get together and chat about it. I think it again, it doesn't have to be anything big. It's really simple how to start the community. I think it's just really important that we start. It's really important that we are really intentional about doing it. And sometimes it just starts with a conversation with one person. So I love that. Do you have anything you want to add, Crystal?
No, not right now. You
Okay.
keep on trucking.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So, uh, Crystal, I'll kind of swing it over to you here. I know that you want to talk a little bit about what Lipedema Canada has for goals, and a little bit about what it means to join this community.
So when it comes to the goals that Lipedema Canada has been working towards, one of them is education, not only for our community, but for medical professionals. So getting accurate information on our website, p academically peer-reviewed studies, things that are backed up by science. So those things are really important to us as a community is education. Now, awareness, of course, too, is a really big part of it. We can't do everything all at once, which is which is unfortunate because we're really a gung-ho, we got our pistols drawn, we're ready to we're ready to go most of the time for a very small group. But that's where our volunteers are going to come in. And we're building that base of volunteers that can take on because not everybody has the time. Like we get it. We get it. Um, but if we can give small tasks that we know will be taken care of and done well, we can continue our mission to help advocate for lipedema patients across the nation and access to equitable health care. We can't get the health care we need without getting the awareness as well as the education out there. So those things are kind of like really big building blocks in what we're doing right now. Of course, fundraising is always important because we can't do anything. We can't attend conferences. We can't get in front of the people we need to be in front of to make those connections to build our network of organizations and doctors, and there's tons of people who are really want to help us, but we need money to make that happen. So, we have grant committees, we have people who have volunteered, or not volunteered, but donated, their own money. Because that's always an option with Lipedema Canada. As a charity, you get charitable receipts. Those things are really important. So yes, awareness, education, volunteer, and growing our community in a way that works for our community, I think is really important because we understand and like accessibility for all or for everyone. We need to make this accessible. And we're in an age of information and technology that's never been before. Um, so we're able to reach people that we could never do before. I think we even have a couple of people from Newfoundland now on our list. I've noticed a couple of people from PEI. Like this is really exciting that we're getting people from these really smaller, more isolated areas of Canada, because there's one in 10 have lipedema. We're really getting out there and picking up people from across the nation. And we're hoping that we can support everyone in the way they need to be supported. So a part of that is through virtual meetups. And that's gonna, I think, And we believe here at Lipedema Canada, it's really going to help us stay more connected as a community. We're going to hear more about, the community's needs. We're going to see what's going on. And it's just, I feel like it's going to be so great. Like, I'm really excited about having people in their provinces connecting with one another, because that's how all this starts. Like you said before, with an idea.
Yes.
It just starts with an idea and the whole thing grows from there. Like how that's where Lipedema Canada came from, an idea. That's where, my legal battle started, with an idea
Hmm.
that, this is unjust. This is not okay. Where do we go from here? And my lipedema ladies, my lipedema ride or dies in Nova Scotia and in Calgary, or in Alberta, Winnipeg, well, across the nation, really.
Yeah.
Were right there for me to bounce ideas off of, to help me, like, go through documents and find out, like, what there's something wrong here. What is it? Like those, I couldn't have done all the things that I've done without my lipedema community.
Absolutely.
And all I wanted to do the moment I found out I had lipedema was share my experience with others. Because if I could go 40 years without understanding what was wrong and be chronically ill and losing the ability to walk and get no support or help, this could happen to anybody.
Hmm.
Anybody. And it is. It's happening to lots of people, and it has been for generations. Poor Nana was in that wheelchair because she had lipedema, but everybody just thought she's too heavy for her legs. Her legs have gotten too big. Like these ideas that there's something wrong with us.
And
But
there's
there's
not.
nothing wrong.
No, there's nothing wrong with us. And that's exactly it. And it makes me think of how we met actually. We met through LinkedIn because I saw your interview. And I was so inspired to hear your story that I went on and did my own interview. And that's really how I got started in public speaking, was because I watched you do it. And I was like, oh, well, what's if you can do it, I can do it, right?
Trust me,
And it
if I can
is.
do it, anybody can do it.
And it is, it's really important for us to share this information and to share our experiences so that people can come in and feel that community and can feel that support. And I think that's why I decided to volunteer with Lipedema Canada as well, right? Is just that I believe in what you guys are doing, and I believe that we really need to get this information out there. We need the medical coverage. We need all of these things that you guys are trying to put through. And we can do it individually, but it's going to be so much harder. We're going to face way more barriers. The beautiful thing about community is when we come together, we're one giant voice instead of 10 or hundreds of little voices trying to speak out, right?
No.
And I think that's why it's so important to volunteer some time, because you guys are trying to do the hard thing right now, and we need to support you.
Thank you so much. We're coming to our last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so this is perfect timing.
Yes. So do you want to talk about what's coming up?
So on April 4th, and it's all advertised on our social media, and we'll be putting more out there this week, reminders that we're having our virtual support meetup starting in, a week from today, on Friday, April 4th. We're going to be hosting it. Lipedema Canada board members are going to be hosting it across the nation on that date. And we are hoping that many of you will join us. We're also hoping that several of you will volunteer to take over these meetings. So once we do a couple, and you see kind of how it's going to be set up, we're not looking for big time commitments. We're looking for maybe even 3 people per time zone. That way, you're not in it for every month, but maybe you could be one person every 3 months that hosts that meeting. And it's just having somebody there to moderate, to get it started up, to put up the to put the meeting up, to advertise it. And oh, actually, we'll probably do most of the advertising anyway. So it's just really being there to uh to host the event. Um, we can have different months with different topics that we'd like to cover, and depending on what's happening, like in the area or what's happening with Lipedema Canada, there may be things that we want to share to get out there. But mostly, it's a place for people to come together and share new information, maybe share a new doctor that's come to the area, that's a new MLD person, or maybe you found
Yes.
another fitter, or maybe you're interested in doing a fitting course. May like there's so many things to talk about, and sometimes it could just be the day that you've had, or maybe the aqua fitness you went to and you're like, wow, I didn't realize it was going to do this for me, or you know what, I didn't feel like doing anything because I was sick today and my swelling is acting up, or I went here and there wasn't a chair. All the chairs had arms, and that was like the scary. It's you look around and all the chairs have arms, and you're like, I can't stand for that long. And you know it's gonna hurt if you sit down, and you might even have bruises when you leave. Like just the realness of the experiences that we have. I think that's gonna be a huge part of what brings Canadians together. And of course, the things that we want to change. We're going to talk, and we do this all the time with our small groups that I talk with on, well, my small Facebook group, or that we talk about even at our board meetings. Like, what are the things that we're going to do to
Hmm.
create change, to move things forward, to help Canadians
Right.
access care? What's next? And those things will roll out, and we are going to need a volunteer base to help us with a lot of that.
Absolutely.
So
For anyone
please
who
come
doesn't
out on
know,
Friday. Please
I was
come
going to
out.
say, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, please do. Please do. We're having a Canadian standoff. We're too
We
polite.
are.
We don't can talk over each other.
No, I was going to say, for anyone who doesn't know, Lipedema Canada is completely run by volunteers. Everyone is also a patient, and these ladies work their butts off, trying to get all this information and content out and getting these events started. So they're not asking you to do anything more than they're already doing.
And we want to make it feasible. We want to make it bite-sized. We do not want you to feel overwhelmed. Most people have 6 to 8 hours a month.
Mhm.
And for those who are looking at hosting meetups, we're only looking for like two.
Yeah.
Um, And if we have a few people who are like committed to doing that, then, it's only once every 3 months. Or depending on people's schedules, like it's nice to have people you can, be like, this is not going to work for me this month. Maybe you can take over, or maybe you can do two in a row. Flexibility is important. And think especially these days, the busy lives, families, and a lot of us are chronically ill, which is another thing that we recognize at Lipedema Canada. We're a board of women who have been sick for a very long time. Many of
Mhm.
us have been lucky enough to had surgery, which has completely changed our lives. And I mean, we talked about that in like the webinar just last week. But our community is one of very sick, in a lot of cases, women. Um, so we don't want anything. We only want to add good things to your life, not make them any harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I appreciate is that you guys are very flexible. Like, you let us kind of decide, okay, how much can we bring? How much time commitment can we bring, right? And that is really valuable because like you said, that flexibility is really key to making sure that everyone can participate equally. And I love that. Okay. I do want to talk a little bit about some advocation tips. There is some information about how to contact me as well up here. Um, but we do want to go over some advocation tips as well because we did put that in things that we're going to talk about. And one of the things that I always think about when I give tips for advocation is number one, write yourself a script. Know what you're going to say before you get into that doctor's appointment because it is so, so, so hard when you're already anxious, you're already nervous, maybe you've got some trauma like we most of us do at a doctor's office to spit out what you want to say in the moment. So I always say, write a script, have it with you. If you need to, hand it to the doctor. You don't have to say anything if you don't need to. Um, the other thing we've talked about previously too is I gave tips about making a medical binder. Let's be real, lipedema comes with some other comorbidities and things that are quite often co-occurring. And once you have more than two items that are potentially like conditions or diseases, it's a great idea to have all of that information in one place so that if a doctor asks, "Oh, when did you have that condition diagnosed?" you can be like, "Oh, that was in September of 2014." And or you can pull out, a report that somebody has taken because you had an X-ray in 2012, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, what did that report say?" And you can just hand it to them, and they don't have to take um, you at your word for it. They can take the person who's actually done that testing, and them at their word, so that we cannot be gaslit when we're in a doctor's appointment. That's really, really important. Another thing that I like to bring up too is this is why community is so important. Bring someone from the lipedema community with you to your appointment if you can. Ask somebody. That's what happened with my friend that I recently met. They came with me to my appointment and were able to back me up and say, actually, no, this is really serious. They've been experiencing this for a long time. I've seen it. And then that way, it is harder for a doctor to invalidate your concerns. And someone else backing you up is a great way to kind of build that connection with somebody else and be like, hey, if you need me to come with you to an appointment, I will come with you to yours now. So, those are some of the tips that I give as far as advocating for yourself, especially in a medical setting. And honestly, if you need more help with advocation, that's what I do. That's why I'm here. Uh, it's kind of what I get paid for. So I understand that not everyone is comfortable advocating for themselves. They maybe don't feel like they have a voice or they don't have a confidence. Well, that's what I'm here for. I've learned through my own experience that advocation is really key, especially with lipedema, because we don't have a lot of that information out there, and a lot of the doctors don't have a lot of that information out there. And sometimes you just have to bring that Lipedema Canada pamphlet with you right to that doctor's appointment and be like, I think we should make sure we're on the same page with this information.
I just want to thank you. You're such an invaluable member of our community. Thank you so much for being here today. We might have some questions. Let's take a look and see if we have any questions to share.
Okay, thanks.
Do you see anything, our other moderators? We
I'll
have
help
any
you.
questions?
Krista Unsworth is asking, what do you do in your business? Referring to Diana, accessibility for everybody consulting. I am also in Alberta, said the omnipotent voice.
Yeah, so what I do is for individuals, I will help them advocate for themselves. So if you need to talk through something that's coming up with work, with a doctor, or things like that, I can help you run through some of those self-advocation tips that I mentioned. Also for businesses, I actually come in and we have conversations about what size inclusion looks like in a business. So Crystal brought up the great example of chairs with armrests, the great enemy of people with lipedema. And I have conversations with business owners about how to make sure that their spaces are accessible and inclusive. Because I've personally experienced um, not having a office chair that fit my body when I was working for a corporation. And it took me 3 different times of advocating for myself to get furniture that fit my body, which, no one should have to go through. And I really want to work with businesses to make sure that they understand that accessibility is your welcome sign. If your business and if your space is not accessible to everyone, no matter what size or ability they have, then you're already telling people, we don't want you here at the door. Before you've even said a word, your space is already speaking for you. So I also help businesses with that. And of course, as you're probably aware, I now do public speaking. So I also do public speaking at different conferences and different engagements. And so I do a little bit of everything in this realm, but I use my own lived experience and some of the education background that I have to help other people that also need size inclusion, because no one else is really talking about it yet, and we need to. It's really important, and it's one of the reasons that Lipedema Canada and I get along so well, because we also have worked on size inclusion at their events. It's been great. So if you guys do need any assistance with that, or if your business maybe needs to hire me because, goodness, the chairs are awful, this is how you get a hold of me. I've got all this information up here. You guys can scan the QR code, or you can reach me at any of the links below. Is there any other questions that we've got popping up, guys?
Oh, yes, said the omnipotent voice again. Let me read them out loud. Heather is asking, what are the top tips to help someone find um, to find someone that can diagnose lipedema? I only have self-diagnosed.
Hmm. Crystal, do you want to take that one?
Well, I think reaching out to the greater community within your area to see on Lipedema Canada as well. I believe we have some doctors already that can in particular areas, but definitely not everybody has access to a professional. So, for example, my doctor didn't know anything about lipedema when I brought um, the news to her. And she said, but I'm willing to look into it. So I printed off the US standard of care and I brought a book called Lipedema, the disease they call fat. And I brought another resource from the Lipedema Foundation. So what I did with the standard of care is I highlighted all of the things that pertain to my situation, which was pretty much everything, and all the things that I had done, which was literally everything they had suggested for conservative therapies, and I was still losing my mobility. So um, I went through it very strategically, made notes from my doctor, and then I was transferred to another doctor, and she had to be willing to be with me on this journey because I couldn't have a doctor who didn't believe me after all I'd been through. And uh, I think it's our responsibility as patients too to help our doctors understand. Now, some doctors are not open and are willing. I completely understand. Um, but coming in armed, and I was nervous. My heart was pounding. I was sweating. I was shaking. I cried the whole time I talked because they have so much control over to anything. The worst case is somebody not believing you. And I mean, I didn't have any proof or anything to say before all these resources came my way. But once I got the resources, I was able to share them with my doctor and able to have a conversation that came with, like, we weren't going to diagnose on the same day, but she's like, what conservative therapies have you done? What do you still have left to do? And I still had compression therapy to do, which I did for a year and a half before I started my surgeries. So I did everything, but she tracked my progress during that. So she could see that I was fitting all of the criteria for diagnosis, and she had to learn what those criteria were because she had access to that those documents. So a big part of it is getting connected with your community, finding out who has been diagnosed in your area. And I mean, some people in Canada live in real rural spots, and their doctors are retired doctors, surgeons from 1980. And they only fly in once every 2 weeks. And that's the reality of living in Canada. Like it is like that. We had doctors come and go. They would sleep on a cot in the hospital, and then, you wouldn't have a doctor for a certain amount of time. That's the reality for small communities in Canada. But get connected with your community, get those resources, and carefully go through them and bring them to your doctor. I even brought the lipid at the time Lipedema Canada was there, it was Lipedema Foundation. So I got their pamphlets and I had them approved at my clinic, and my clinic is a university clinic with 8 doctors. So, now I have 8 doctors in Nova Scotia who have some knowledge of lipedema and at least one that can diagnose at that particular place. So it is, and it's unfair. Don't get me wrong, it is unfair that we have to do this work, but nobody's going to do it for us. We
Absolutely.
have to talk to our doctors and we have to not necessarily make them believe, but bring them the evidence,
Mhm.
bring them the information. Not all of them are going to listen. Not
Mhm.
not everybody's good at their job either, and that goes from the tall to the small. It doesn't matter what it is, but it is our responsibility to advocate for ourselves. And one of those is bringing lipedema to our medical professionals, um, and seeing if they're willing to listen. And let
So
us know
just
if your doctor's not listening, I think is a big part too, because we're going to be doing a lot of education, hopefully by the end of this year with doctors across the nation. So having a list of doctors who like patients have tried to talk to and are really not receptive, we need to know so we can reach out and help. We just want to help. Good luck.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thing to bring up, Crystal. And from my own experience, I got diagnosed with lymphedema first, and luckily enough, my occupational therapist was the one who technically realized that I had that and sent a letter to get a diagnosis from my GP. And so, keeping in mind too, occupational therapists, manual lymphatic drainage therapists, those people are also people that might know someone that can help you get diagnosed, which is also why it's important to reach out to your community and
Mhm.
ask who people are seeing and what kind of experiences they've had with someone. Because I know that it's so hard right now to find a doctor. I live in Alberta. Oof, It's 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 wild out here. But from my own experience, I had a doctor who didn't listen to me for almost 5 years, and I kept just searching for another one. And luckily for myself, within the last 3 months, I found a doctor who actively listens. Do they know everything about lipedema? No, but at least they're open to having that conversation. And that's really, really important because you need a team who's going to support you.
Open minds change lives.
And
Absolutely.
that's a great segue right there. We're just about out of time here, and we had some amazing comments that came through our comment section. So, with your permission, panelists, I would love to share some of what the community had to say during your fantastic presentation.
Please
Please do.
do.
So, Karen Talbot wrote that when she was first diagnosed with lipedema, she felt as if she was exonerated from a lifetime of persecution of being a person of size, and then felt that they were left hanging because there was no one waiting in line to apologize for treating me the way that they did.
Mhm.
I'm just going to grab that comment. Reaching out to the virtual lipedema communities has helped so much to not feel so isolated. It has been really good in that regard. It's an incredibly strong community. It's still scary, though. Um, let's go through some others. Folks on YouTube are saying that this community means a lot. People are thanking you, of course, for your excellent authenticity, which, of course, I would say that you guys are two of our most real speakers that we ever have. So I love the conversations you get into. For those that don't know, my name is Emma Cloney. I'm the vice president, and I am the omnipotent voice that you are hearing right now. And I just want to thank Crystal and Diana for joining us today. And Crystal, I'll let you do your wrap up, and then we're going to send it out almost on time in true ADHD style.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. For those of you who come on later, please, reach out to Diana. She has a lot of great resources. She runs her own business, and she's trying to make a difference in our community. And then, Diana, I want to thank you sincerely for being here today with me and for taking the time to share community with our community. And thanks for being part of it.
No, and thank you guys so much. I know everyone at Lipedema Canada is just out there trying to do the same thing. They're out here helping people and they're coming from their own experience. And I really thank you guys for giving us this opportunity to have a conversation and hold space for everyone because I know that these are important conversations and they can also be really heavy conversations, but we need to have them and we need to reach out to those community members for support.
And I hope to see many people there on Friday the 4th for our volunteer meetups.
I know I'll be there.
All right. Thank you
Bye
and bye-bye.
guys.